Do I have to hit record? Thanks, Maddie. Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Jeronimo Roldan. I'm the state historical architect, and part of that job involves running the federal tax credit program for the state of Washington. So, what I'm going to do here today is for this little lunch and learn is give you a really quick kind of rundown, basic rundown of the program. This is our kind of largest financial incentive in the state of Washington. We also have special valuation. We also have grants. I'm not going to go into any of those other kind of programs today, just doing the federal tax credits. So it's a great little piece of financial incentive that works all across the state of Washington. And I'll give you kind of like the basic parameters of how the application works. So in the simplest of terms, the federal investment tax credit is offers you 20% of your project budget back for a rehabilitation project on a historic building. So, and the example that I always give is for $1 million rehab, you get 200,000 back in tax credits. That's in broadest terms. So here we go. The tax credit is a tax credit, so that means it is run by the IRS here, but the IRS relies on the National Park Service to review the work, and the National Park Service works with DAHP, me specifically, to kind of work directly with the applicants. At the National Park Service, our reviewer currently reviews 5 or 6 states now. And so she cannot kind of have a personal contact with all of the applicants. That's where the State Historic Preservation Office or the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation comes in to help work with people to understand how to write their projects, how to have them meet the standards. And yeah, and so please reach out to me. That is my job, and I love talking to people. A tax credit project application is a three-part process: a statement of significance, a description of your work, and a request for certification of the completed work. Basically, the kind of part two and part three are kind of a before and after, really in basic terms. To qualify for the federal tax credit, you have to meet four basic requirements. The first of these requirements is that your property should be listed individually on the National Register or as a contributing building in a district. You can also be in the process of listing your property. So it doesn't need to already be listed. You can go for a listing and do your tax credit project at the same time. The second requirement is that the building has to be income producing. So that basically means, in broadest terms, a rental where you're kind of generating money from your building. You have to be paying taxes in order to get a tax credit. So unfortunately, it can't be your personal residence, and the building can't really be owned by a 501c3. There's other things in there, but we can talk about that later if you have questions about this kind of income producing criteria. The project has to be substantial. This is like a kind of a big deal for a lot of projects. It has to be worth more than the value of the building minus the land. That's the term is called an adjusted basis, and it means the project has to be pretty big. Sometimes that's not so hard to meet for projects that have been owned or for the buildings that have been owned for a long time. And then the fourth criteria is that the work has to meet the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. That's basically reviewed by the National Park Service, and we can definitely talk about how to meet the Secretary of the Interior standards. I mean, the kind of way I do the 4 Rs. I mean, there's 10 standards, and I'm not going to read them all. I just kind of, the easiest way that I talk about it is, retain the historic character where it is. The tax credit projects don't make you go back to any kind of period, but what you do have, try to keep it. You keep that by repairing it as much as possible. So to the extent that's feasible, you repair what you have. When you can't repair it, when it's just no longer feasible to repair, like windows or some materials, then you want to replace them with in kind materials or what would be like a kind of compatible replacement. And then you want to make sure that these changes, yeah, are compatible and they would be reversible. So any big additions or structural changes, you want to try to think about them in a way that they would be reversible in the future. Obviously, happy to take any questions about any of this stuff. And so, what qualifies for the tax credit? The term is called a qualified rehabilitation expenditure. These are both hard and soft costs. Hard costs are going to be things like mechanical, electrical, plumbing, finishes, demolition, anything that's related to your actual execution of the project. Soft costs are labor, permit fees, your consultant fees. These basically anything that's related to the building. What's not included a lot of times are acquisition costs, furniture, landscaping. Everything needs to be within the building, and rugs and curtains. So yeah, those are kind of like your basic things. But a lot of stuff is included in this. Yeah, it's a great incentive because of that. Oops, I'm going to go back here and just kind of look at the project numbers like overall. Um, so huge number at the bottom of the screen there. But yeah, we've done a lot of projects all over the state over the years. It's been around since the 70s, and really tons of projects from the early 80s. And more recently, these are kind of our numbers through 2024. And you can see kind of we have a lot of projects. Surprisingly, Spokane, I always throw this number out there, but I've never verified it myself, has more tax credit projects per capita than any other city in the country. So a couple of other quick numbers on some of these. We're looking at about three-quarters of our projects include affordable units. There's we're talking, at much lower cost than typical construction. These are based on 2023 numbers, but I'm pretty sure if we run them again, that cost is still going to be way more than the kind of typical tax credit project housing. So it's a great place to kind of use it for low income housing and or even market rate, but like affordable type of housing, attainable housing. Um, so a couple of projects here that I always like to highlight. Here's one from Dayton, the Weinhardt Building. This is a historic hotel that was uh, renovated recently. Project was about $1 million and got the applicant about $200,000 in tax credit, just like my example from the beginning. And great little renovation, pretty straightforward work. There was nothing really. It was an applicant led application, so sometimes people rely on consultants to do these. I think it's always nice when you see people just do it themselves, and this is one of them where the owner just said, "Hey, I can write this application." Did it himself. He did a great job. Elks Lodge in Bellingham. This is another great little kind of Main Street scale project. We're looking at, $500,000 tax credit that was returned to the applicant. What's interesting about this project, I think, is if you look at the photo on the right of the interior, that's the completed space. So, you're seeing drop ceilings in there, you're seeing some nice windows in there, but also you have some linoleum flooring in there. And I think, sometimes people think that tax credit projects are, these restoration or really a hardcore preservation projects. They're not. Like I said, keep what you have. So in this case, you do see some nice windows in there that were probably there before. And but people are kind of going in with contemporary finishes a lot of times. Cheney High School. This is always like, yeah, one of my favorite projects. This is beautiful, and really great project. Provided a lot of student housing right near a campus. So, just excellent use of the tax credit. Photo on the right, I think what the thing I always like to point out for these, if you look at the ceiling there at the top of the photograph, you can kind of start to get an idea that, oh yeah, these are subdivided spaces. So even, some people think that spaces can't change inside of some of these buildings. I think that it's always good to point out, being like, oh yeah, these things, large spaces are subdivided into apartments a lot of times, and that's how people make this tax credit work. The Coopville Cash Store, beautiful little project. Photo on the right does not do this project justice. It is a beautiful restoration of this awesome little building in downtown Coopville. Really, a lot of work went into this. They did amazing work restoring that little storefront down there and just doing amazing work all throughout the building. Obviously, a little higher end here, we're able to get a nice little bed and breakfast out of their building, and obviously the tax credit doesn't hurt in this case. The First Baptist Church in Yakima. This is a it was a church that was turned into housing, and they did nice, very simple units, and were able to, if you look at the image on the right, kind of work with the older windows, but still, having some more modern kind of amenities put into the here, and it's a nice little project. So here's another great example. Here is a YWCA in Seattle, great recent project, able to provide 114. There are some low-income apartments in there, a mix of moderate income apartments, and they were able to, if you look at the numbers here, I mean, obviously the low-income housing tax credits, that's a LAHTC in there, is their biggest project financing, but they were able to mix, their second biggest was the historic tax credit. Um, Really great project. Since 2015, we have, the more than two-thirds of our projects have been seismic retrofits. So obviously another huge area where you have big costs and being able to recoup 20% of those rehabilitation is just, yeah, great. And then housing, this is probably most common type of project type that I see is these conversions of either commercial or maybe hotels or uh, schools into housing units, and that represents a big chunk of our project overall project numbers. Um, if you have questions about any of the application process, feel free to ask them right now. Can't really get into too many specifics, but if you have, questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm always talking to people about their projects. Always love to answer questions and even just kind of go through ideas here. So that number needs a four, 360-584-5900. You can always reach out to me by the phone too if you can't reach me through email. So I will open it up to questions here and feel free to speak up, unmute, however you want to do it.
Hi, Geronimo. I can't figure out how to raise my hand, so I'm hoping you could hear me.
Okay, don't worry, go ahead.
I just had a question. If because of the requirements, if that would preclude any county or city owned buildings from qualifying, um, because of it needing to be income generating.
I mean, typically, yes. There are ways that people can lease their buildings, their public buildings, to a private entity and recoup some of the tax credits that the private entity would then generate. That's a syndication process. It's pretty complicated. I could definitely send you more information on that if you'd like to reach out to me, though.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Kim.
Hey, Geronimo, I thought maybe folks would be interested in knowing, are there any kind of buildings or anything that don't qualify for tax credits? Like, can I get tax credits for a boat?
No, you cannot get that credits for a boat. It needs to be a building. Something that for what would you say, four walls and a roof. I mean, that covers a pretty broad range of buildings, of building types. I think typically, if you have multiple buildings on a property, you're going to want to take a look at how that register nomination works, and that would be something that you'd talk with our National Register Coordinator, Michael Hauser, about. If you have questions about what, you know, what's a contributing building or not in a historic district or a historic nomination or National Register nomination. Just want to make sure that these are National Register. That's another kind of area where I get questions about is, we have a Washington State Register. Unfortunately, the buildings on that Washington State Register don't qualify. And local districts, it can't just be locally nominated, it has to be on the National Register. Um, all those registers can get kind of confusing, but I think it's always, yeah, it's great. If you have questions about it, again, please contact me. Other questions?
I'll keep throwing some out there
Yeah,
just
please do.
because I think folks might want to hear some of this stuff. So where can I go to figure out what counts as a
Oh,
qualified expenditure?
there we go. Great question, Kim. And Maddie's going to throw in a couple of links into there. We have some links from our DAP website, a link to the IRS. The IRS actually has great FAQs on there. It's a frequently answered questions, yeah, it's a wonderful document to reference if you have questions about what qualifies as what counts as a qualified rehabilitation expenditure. They have white papers that they can point you to on there. Um, yeah, our QREs, or qualified rehabilitation expenditures. There's yeah, it's a lot. It's almost anything. Like, I think I use the image of a house turned upside down. It's oftentimes like if you take something upside down and shake it, it's what you wouldn't take with you if you moved out. I think is the easiest way of thinking about it. So even built-in cabinetry and stuff like that can count as a qualified rehabilitation expenditure. But yeah, a lot of stuff counts. It's just no furniture, no curtains, and then it all has to be within the building. Um, Other questions, Kim, or anyone?
What about additions?
Additions, again, can't count as a qualified rehabilitation expenditure because they are outside the footprint of the building. So, or the envelope of the building. I use that kind of more architecty term sometimes. It's like your perimeter, your built perimeter of your building. So it's not the property line, it's actually the building itself. So anything that's like within there is going to count it for your tax credit, not additions. Although additions are subject to review by the Park Service under the standards for new construction within the boundaries of historic properties. Um, so yeah, they are subject to some review. It's not as intense of a review as the building itself, as the project itself. But yeah, they would be reviewed as new construction next to a historic building.
Shannon has a question here in the chat. I'll read it to you.
Please do.
Could curtains count if they are in a historic theater?
That's a great question. I think I would ask for clarification on that from the Park Service, about those that type of an element. I mean, yeah, I would think not because they can be changed out. But there's obviously different types of curtains. Like a screen would be something that would definitely um, count as a qualified rehabilitation expenditure. But the curtains themselves, I'm not sure that those would count. But we can always ask for clarification from the IRS or Park Service on this. And again, a lot of those QRE questions, it's the IRS website that Maddie put in the chat there is a great resource for a lot of these types of questions. They do come up.
So if someone has a building they want to work on, so how should they go about getting started?
If you want to get started, please give me a call. I think that's the most important thing that I could probably share with people on the call today. Like, just give me a call as soon as you know that you are even curious about it. You don't have to have started a project yet. In fact, the the best thing you can do to ensure that you're getting your tax credit application approved is to send it in before you start work. That you don't have to. I work on a lot of projects where people are already in the middle of a project and then discover about the tax credit about halfway through. Um, but they're a lot easier to get approved if you take care of it before you begin your work. Sometimes I recommend people kind of think about it in along the lines of like if you're going in for permit or review by a city, you might want to think about starting to do your tax credit application before that. Typically, just because it's can be a little bit more in depth writing up that application than doing landmarks review. So it's always good to get it started earlier. And please, yeah, give me a call. I can answer all your questions, and if there's something I can't answer, I can definitely get you the answer from somebody who can. I'm wondering, just a question out there to folks, is there an area on this that you think would be helpful to see more in depth on? Would you like to see a presentation on any area of the tax credits? I see some folks on the call who maybe have done tax credit projects before and maybe would like a further discussion.
They're quite a bunch. You
It's
gave
all
them all
right.
the information that they needed.
Everybody's having lunch. It's okay.
Yeah.
That's what lunch and learns are. You learn while you lunch.
Yes. Well, hearing none, we will go ahead and
Oh,
close
I hope I
the
hope I get to work on one too with you.
session out. Thank you all for coming. And as always, go to our website and see what's coming up next and reach out if you have any questions. We appreciate you all. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.